What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Undeserved Flavor. I have a little bit of a errand to run this morning, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to jump in here and respond to a particular comment that I actually find very relevant to this channel. So I'm going to switch the camera around, and we are going to hit the road. Today we're going to talk about preterism. Shout out to Blue Jay for dropping the comment. So, I have looked into preterism in the past. I have not, by definition, studied preterism. That's not my style. I don't study things. I will read a book. I will read a blog post. I will watch a YouTube video. I just don't consider myself a studier. That said, a lot of stuff I do, I don't know why I'm going off on this self-apologetic rant here. A lot of stuff that I do, I guess, could be technically studying, like reading things that are applicable to the topic that I'm interested in. I'm just not going to give myself that much credit. So, moving on. I have looked into preterism in the past. It's been a few years. I've been acquainted with people who are full preterists and partial preterists. You'll most certainly come across those folks if you are in a group of Christian Universalists or community. Let me know how the vehicle noise is while I'm driving, because it's one of the reasons why I usually don't put videos up while I'm driving, because I personally am a sound snob and I try my best to not make the videos sound like crap. Back to the preterism thing. So why I originally could not jump into the preterist boat, and I actually got excited about it at first when I first on the surface when I first heard about the nutshell of what it is a few years back on this journey of deconstruction unto universalism, deconstruction from evangelicalism, that is. It sounded kind of cool. But then all of a sudden there was a few things where it was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can sit well. I don't know how I sit with that. Like the whole idea that Jesus, the whole second coming, has already come and gone. It has been fulfilled. The book of Revelation has been completely fulfilled, and everything Bible is first century. And now, 2,000 years later, we just need to kind of live and let live, be born, have a good life, die, and go to heaven when we're dead. I know that's not the actual definition of preterism, but that's what I picked up from what the preterists that I knew and that I saw on YouTube and that I read about said, essentially that's what they taught me. Or at least that's what I picked up from what they were trying to put down. So don't fault me for thinking that if it's wrong, because, if people are putting up crap that isn't right, it is what it is. Anyway, I don't like preterism in the idea that they have to try and force the book of Revelation to have been written pre-70 AD in order for it to fit their agenda. I don't like any agenda or any stream of belief or faith that has to force a historical document to fit their agenda, because I don't find truth by bending evidence to fit my narrative. And preterism has to, despite evidence, and I know we have a lot of evidence, but we have evidence that says the book of Revelation, it could have been written in 60 AD. 10 years before 70 AD. I think the siege started in like 64 or 66. I don't remember. Like I said, I'm not a scholar, so don't quote me. But everybody knows, the good old saying 70 AD. So preterists have to have the Bible, or have to have the Book of Revelation written before 70 AD, because they say that it is specifically, in terms of linear time being relevant, it has to have been written before 70 AD, because it was a warning. It was a specific warning to whoever it was written to, the churches, at the time, essentially giving them a glimpse of what's about to happen, metaphorically anyway. And then you had the siege of Jerusalem, where Rome came in, and I don't know what it was, like 1.5 million Jews were killed and then thrown into Gehenna, hell, essentially, what the King James calls hell. The garbage dump that used to be used for sacrificing people. But like I said, that's not the only reason why I don't find myself aligned with preterism. Well, I guess that was two reasons. Number one, they had to bend the narrative of when the book was written to fit their belief. By bend it, I just mean they have to take a dogmatic stance on when it was written. Otherwise, their whole entire faith structure and doctrine and dogma comes crumbling down. So it has to work pre-70 AD. The other thing is, they say that Jesus came back. Yes, there was this story about that the Jewish historian, what was his name, Josephus or something, Bocephus. I don't know. Josephus. I don't remember. I don't remember the guy's name, but there was this Jewish historian, and there was, the point of this was the fact that he was Jewish and non-Christian. The preterists like to say, well, he was non-Christian, so that therefore he was non-biased. We're not making this stuff up. This was somebody, basically this was a third-party tested study. See, it works. But, well, not necessarily. What am I saying? There was this supposed event where some people claimed to have seen, this cloudy figure of Jesus and angels, literally a cloudy figure, up in the sky, clouds shaped like Jesus and angels, and everybody was oohing and awing over this, majestic, cloudy, natural event. So they think this was the second coming of Jesus that was talked about in Acts. When Jesus went up and there was the two angels, why are you looking up in the sky? Dude's going to come back the same way he came, or he left, which is the only verse that we have that even kind of talks about a second coming. I don't think well, you know what? Let's emphasize this transition a little bit. I don't think a second coming is a big deal, or should be a big focus, or a big part of our dogma as Christians. I don't think a second coming of Jesus. So this is a big deal that I'm saying this, because this is a really big deal for modern day Christianity of virtually all flavors. Only a few flavors really don't focus on or care about the idea of a second coming for whatever reason. Maybe they think it, it could happen, or maybe it won't, or maybe it already has. Or it's just that it's kind of like a nonchalant whatever, maybe it's just not a very big part of their whole dogma faith systems. They're not looking forward to this big event that, is kind of supposed to be the telos, or the end all, of this big grand scheme that God has coming. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think the second coming is do you think it's a big point of relevance, or a big point of importance, for the whole Christian thing. Like, as Christians, we become Christians, we learn a little bit about Christianity. So in the nutshell, as a new Christian, you've never heard about the gospel. You go to a church, they give you their little pamphlet. What does it mean to start following Christ? You're going to get through the vision of their church, and then they're going to tell you about Christianity. Regardless of what flavor of Christianity, you're going to find basically a nutshell of what it means to be a Christian and a follower of Jesus, follower of Christ. And you're going to see things in there, depending on the flavor of Christianity, you're going to see things that potentially point to a rapture. You're going to see things in there that talk about, like living a sin-free life and the rules you're supposed to follow and all the different things, depending on the flavor of Christianity. Is the second coming of Jesus really... I'm a loss for words here, and I really shouldn't be, but I'm just kind of brain farting. Is the second coming of Jesus really that big of a deal, or should it be that big of a concern? All right, I'm gonna, because I parked. I gotta run in and grab something real fast, and then bring something to somebody. But is the second coming that big of a deal? I used to think it was. I used to think it was the point of the whole thing, aside from salvation. But like, there's obviously salvation. But while we're living here on earth, it was like, get ready, he's coming back, and we know not the day or the hour. As far as preterism goes, preterism really does believe that the second coming of Jesus was a fundamental point of Christianity and the whole thing. And they put that second coming in its place as being already done, already completed, already happened in or around 70 AD. And therefore the book of Revelation is no longer relevant in any context to us today, other than it's just a fun book to read. Number one, I don't believe in the preterist idea that was the second coming of Jesus. So, big point to this video, number one, if you care about what I think. I don't think that the coming, or the second coming, I should say, of Jesus, as described literally by the two angels, as Jesus ascended into heaven, has happened yet. I don't think the second coming in that context has happened yet. Because if we're going to take that particular passage literally, and that is if, which I don't see why we can't. We can. I don't have a problem holding that as a dogmatic belief. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think that it should affect the rest of your faith. But if Jesus is coming back, essentially in his incarnate body, or should I say resurrected body, the incarnation that had been died and resurrected, with its still holes in his hands and its side and whatever, I don't think that body's back here yet. And I don't think it was a fluffy cloud in the sky that kind of looked like Jesus. Like, we've had little signs like that. On a building in Clearwater, Florida, there's a mist created by the salt water on the side of this giant photo, of literally like Mother Mary holding a baby Jesus. It's literally like a rainbow of salty water mist. And there's pictures of it. They sell it in little Christian kitschy gift shops. We have crap like that. It happens all the time. Whether it was the spiritual world interacting with us, or just natural phenomenon where our psyche created something, or decided that it was something and it was just a coincidence, I don't know. Personally, I don't care. And I really don't care if you have a view one way or the other, because to me, it doesn't matter. If you find that to be encouraging or hopeful or awe-inspiring, that's amazing. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. I don't find it funny. I'm not laughing at it. I just don't care, personally. I actually have a little picture of it in my office, in a box that my mom gave me, 20 years ago. For me, it's kind of like, it's a moot point. It's novel. It's a novelty item. I don't mean novel in the sense that it's new. It's a novelty item. It's a gift shop item. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how I see it. And that's so preterism on multiple points. I don't believe Jesus has come back in the context that he was said to be coming back by the angels. And I don't necessarily believe the book of Revelation was written pre-70 AD, because there's evidence that it could have been written as late as 110 AD. This is not an established fact among scholars that it was written pre-70 AD. You have to have, like, you know how like the whole thing about Christianity is like, well, you have to have faith. Well, we shouldn't have to have faith about a particular date when a book was written in order for our entire actual faith system to be relevant. So that's why I can't buy that. Because like in order for my faith to be relevant, I have to have faith in a event that is unlikely to have actually been real. Like, if you want to have faith in Jesus having been, a human being, that doesn't take a lot of faith. That's fine. That's cool. There's evidence of that. There's multiple cultures throughout the last 2,000 years that are non-Christian that have actual evidence of Jesus being a real human being. We don't have to argue about that. There's only a few idiots out there who are like, we don't actually have evidence of Jesus ever being a real man. Well, we'll always have loony bins with us, okay? So, forget them. But I think the book of Revelation was written after 70 AD, just simply based on the evidence that we have. I don't even know if there's a scholarly agreement on when it was written. I know that there's a window of time, and it's between 90 and 110 AD from what I've seen. I may be wrong. I may have been reading some, because I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar. I don't know. Maybe the crap that I'm reading is just, someone else's made up BS. I don't know. But from what I made up, or from what I've seen, and didn't make up, from multiple sources, it seems like the consensus is the book of Revelation was written by John between 90 and 110 AD, which means John wrote it when he was an old MFer. Literally, like John, he could have been between 10 and 15 years old when Jesus died. He could have been a young teen or preteen, which could have been why he was quote unquote John the Beloved. He could have been the little guy, that followed Jesus. Like, who knows how old these guys were? They weren't all the age of Jesus. John could have literally been a little cousin. I don't know how he was related to Jesus, or if he was related, or how he knew them. But literally, like, Jesus could have just been like, hey kid, what's up, man? He really was fond of children. And that may be why John was John the Beloved, because he was a little child and he loved hanging out with his adult friend, Jesus. Think about it. It's not too far of a stretch. That said, it's not a stretch to think that John could have written the book of Revelation in 110 AD, because he probably would have only been, if he was 10 years old in 30 AD, you do the math, 80 years old. He wouldn't have been ancient, Even if he was 20 years old when Jesus died, he would have been 90 at 110 AD. So it's not unreasonable to think that he could have actually written that book as a super old guy on the island of Patmos who had been through multiple martyr attempts where they were failed, obviously, because he was still alive. But I think the book of Revelation was a near-death experience that John experienced, or an out-of-body experience. Like, John was a beat-up dude, and he was living on a prison island. Like, dude was probably, and who knows, like in prisons, guys get their hands on some stuff, to get through their day, if you know what I mean. Now imagine 2,000 years ago, like, I'm sure they knew how to grow plants and mushrooms and things. Like, I'm sure guys had ways, especially guys that were like secluded to an island. Like, imagine the mushrooms they must have been growing, or you know what I mean? Like, who the heck knows? I'm not chalking, listen, I'm not chalking the book of Revelation up to a mushroom trip. But all things considered, if you want to be a thinking human being, as opposed to just drinking whatever Kool-Aid is being splashed in your face, you got to consider all things, and that's why if I study anything, it's NDEs, because I listen to them and I read them every single day because I am interested in them, and not because I'm trying to gain a diploma or a piece of paper, a degree for anything. I'm just literally very interested, and it's really helping me round out my schema of reality in the afterlife, potentially. That said, as far as preterism goes, I think it's a grasping at, what's that term? Grasping at straws? Or whatever that, like just like a variety of other Christian dogmas, I don't know. I don't know what the tendency is, or why the tendency among people to try and figure everything out. Like, why do you have the need to feel like you have to have everything figured out? That's obviously not everybody has this need, but generally speaking, amongst humanity, it is a tendency that we need to have everything figured out. We have to have everything dogmatically nailed down, especially our faith, which is why it leads to wars. Because it's more of our dogma is more valuable than another human being's life. I think that's mental illness. If you think that someone else is worse or is bad enough to deserve the death penalty on religious grounds, you are a kook and you belong in a loony bin. And I do think we should reestablish loony bins. What do they call them? Insane asylums? I don't think those exist anymore, at least in this country. But for religious fanatics, I don't care what religion you are, whether you're Christian or Muslim or whatever cult you're a part of, if you believe that someone else that doesn't believe the way you do is worthy of death, to the point that you might actually act upon those thoughts, or maybe even simply just condone it or advocate for it, you know what? I don't think there's a pill that we can give you. Like, yes, technology, pharmaceuticals, everything, we've come a long way in this world. Science has come a long way. I don't think they've developed a pill yet that is good enough to overcome homicidal religious fanaticism. So, I'm sorry, it may be less than humane, but we should reinstitute loony bins for religious fanatics. I'm just kidding, by the way. Like, seriously, this is a joke. I know there's some really sensitive people that potentially could be watching this. I don't believe that's a solution for anything. Because then because now you have the conspiracy theorists watching this that are gonna be like, well, what's that gonna do? The conservatives, they're gonna use that to lock up to liberals and vice versa. So obviously it's a joke. But I'm trying to make a point, and do you see, like, using strong language like that? That was very commonly used in the days of Jesus, especially around the time that the book of Revelation was written, but specifically in the time of Jesus, when he used strong rhetoric like, you'll go to hell, Gehenna, the grave, whatever. Used strong rhetoric like, the story of the rich man and Lazarus, to try and just tell a simple story about don't be greedy. Treat your brothers with respect and kindness. It had nothing to do with legitimate, literal afterlife crap. It's just strong rhetoric about issues that matter. Anyway, back to the point of the video. I'm not dogmatic on a lot of things anymore. As the further down I go in this journey, and I've actually considered the fact that am I backing too far off from spirituality in general? Am I becoming too complacent? Actually, no. I'm just as, if not more, spiritual and spiritually active now than I've ever been. I'm just not dogmatic and doctrinally dogmatic. Doctrine is becoming less and less relevant to anything that matters. We don't have to have an eschatology. It doesn't matter. There's literally only one point that I really think Unitarian Universalism has going for them, and that is, it's what's in this life that matters. If you're going to be passionate about something, and you can't figure out what to be passionate for as a Christian Universalist, since you don't have a hell to preach against anymore, a hell to preach for anymore, find a social justice cause, but get the facts and don't be an idiot. I'm not saying be decisive. Be a voice for someone that needs to be a voice. Whether it's for babies that are being aborted or for mothers who should probably get an abortion. Find a voice, but be reasonable. Be passionate. There's a lot of things in this life that you can find a voice and be passionate about. Christian Universalism, what Jesus came to talk about, largely was how to live this life and do it in the Spirit. Like, bring the kingdom of heaven into this existence, into this. The whole point of Jesus' message was heaven on earth, on earth as it is in heaven. It was not turn or burn. It was not go find a rock to hide behind until you die, and then you'll be saved if you believed in Jesus and said the magic words. Find something in this life to get passionate about that is righteous, not self-righteous, but like honorable, noble. You're not going to be able to please everybody, but do something noble in this life. Be a good person, and follow the Spirit of God. Get, first and foremost, cultivate a deep relationship with God, Father. Get to know Him. That's number one. Point number one. And if you got to have a couple years where you don't crack a Bible or worry about religious things, that might actually be beneficial for some people. You can be at peace doing it. I'm not saying go run off and start, doing drugs and drinking and living at bars and, like getting to be a part of a biker group and, like becoming a gang affiliated. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can put the Bible down for a little bit, read a few other books, explore what the world has to offer, and then come back to the Bible. Oh, you're talking about the Word of God. Get away from the Word of God. What? First you say the hell's not real. Then you're saying that the devil's potentially not real. That's as far as I've gone. I said, in terms of the devil being an ontological being, I've never actually completely argued that he is not an ontological being. But it is a very good possibility that the devil is not an ontological being, and it's simply a figment of a particular imagination of groupthink. But I don't know. I'm just rambling now. This was supposed to be a 15-minute video at most. It's half an hour. But anyway, so that's where I'm at preterism. If I didn't answer all your questions, drop another comment. I will round it out in a comment or maybe even put up another video. But hey, that's where I'm at. Peace. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Don't fail me now, clicker.